This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by Productivity Authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hey, Adam, welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Hey, Ken, thanks so much. Excited to be here on the show with you.
We're excited to have you. You've got a quite a background ranging from, ultra sports, business. Can you talk to me a little bit about I always like to start with kind of the upbringing. I like to know the kind of story of the entrepreneur and of the leader, and maybe kind of walk us through your early days.
Sure. Happy to do that. So, I've been in business, actually. I first started up my first business at the age of 11. So, so it's kind of like 30 plus years. And it's interesting because at the age of 11, Ken, I went through what I would call a midlife crisis, just kind of a bit much earlier on.
Sure.
So what happened to me at the age of 11? So I didn't particularly have a great childhood upbringing. I didn't particularly have a great one, unfortunately. I was through the foster care system. I lost my hair through a condition called alopecia, which is a common form of hair loss. And I literally just lost all my hair. Woke up one day and it literally just came out in handfuls when I was 10 years old. And that was kind of like the beginning journey for me. So I was so ashamed about the way I looked. I had to wear like a baseball cap when I went to school. So when I'm wearing my uniform and stuff, I wear a baseball cap. Even when I was going out in public, I was just so ashamed about the way I looked. And so at the age of 11, I was encouraged through my father to get into distance running. And so I literally had zero experience in distance running. I wouldn't class myself as an athlete back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that, Ken, is actually I was actually suffering from, I was an asthma sufferer. So you're probably thinking to yourself, like, why would an 11-year-old boy that suffers from asthma want to get into distance running? That's completely delusional, right? That's craziness, right? So I turned up one day. I got down to the athletics track. I didn't go with anyone. I went on my own at 11 years old. I didn't particularly have a lot of what's the word I was looking for? Mentors and support structures like my parents. They weren't really there for me. I was just kind of like there on my own type of thing. So I went down to the athletics track, and I remember when I actually appeared at the athletics track, and I got to the counter. And the counter looked like it was about 12 feet tall, literally 12 feet tall. That's kind of what it looked like as an 11-year-old, right? And then this lady kind of like peered over. She's like, "Hey, can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm interested in potentially joining a running club." She's like, "Oh, great, fantastic. What's your experience?" I went, "Nothing." She went, "Okay, what event do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, I was been told that I should do distance running." She went, "Great." I said, "But there's a snag." I went, "What's the snag?" And I told her, I was like, "I'm an asthma sufferer." She said, "Don't worry about that. Let me introduce you to one of the coaches." I'm like, "Okay, no worries." Anyway, so I started walking down to the athletics track. Okay. Because it's about a couple of 100 meters from the clubhouse to the athletics track. And I started seeing all these runners, like there were sprinters, there were field and track athletes, distance runner. And I already started getting imposter syndrome. And I started making a judgment in my mind, thinking I'm not good enough. And I'm not, I'm never going to be as good enough as these people. You start creating those like negative thought processes that were going through your mind, right? So the first 3 to 6 months were a real struggle for me. Like I could barely run 100, 150 meters without really kind of getting out of breath, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a real struggle for me. Like it was so difficult for me. But as my lungs started to adapt, and so as my body started to adapt, as my mindset started to change, my coach, who at the time, what I loved about my coach is that he, back in the day, of course, he had won his trophies, medals, and was a track champion, but he could turn someone like me, General Joe Public, into a champion. That's what he was claimed to fame for. And in that process, I'd actually met my training partner at the time. He is the current world and Olympic world champion at the moment in 5,000 and 10,000 meters.
Wow.
So I got trained with him, right? So his name is Samo Farah. So he was knighted and for his services to the country, but he's a world 5,000 and 10,000 meters. So he was my training buddy. And we actually had very similar backgrounds. So it was interesting because he came from Somalia originally. He didn't really know that much English. And the difference is that he was bullied and I was bullied. So we had very similar, even though we didn't go to the same school, we came from kind of similar backgrounds, poor backgrounds, that kind of stuff. But what was really interesting about this, Ken, is that we used our I suppose our not weaknesses, but our experiences in being bullied and being introverted and not being so confident. And we used that to compete against each other. So we egged each other on. And during the winter months, when it was like, -5 Celsius outside, which would generally be very, very cold, while all the other kids were playing video games inside in the nice and warm, me and my training buddy were out in cold, wearing shorts and t-shirt, putting in the training, right? And literally, I remember there was the running track, and at the back of the running track, there was this big, boggy, muddy field. And we would go running around this boggy, muddy field. There would be hardly any floodlights. And literally just go run around this field, like just for the sake of it, right? As you do. But effectively, after about 9 months of training, my asthma had completely disappeared.
Wow.
Completely disappeared. And within about 18 months, I would say probably 18 months to 2 years, I'd started to get really good, like really good. And they got to the point where I started representing a county and almost a national level as a runner. My asthma had disappeared. And I used that as a platform to effectively improve my confidence, because I was kind of introverted. Because I didn't have those support mechanisms, but I used running as a propulsion, as a momentum, as a platform to drive me forward in life, And at that very same time, at the age of 11 was a very special age for me, Ken. About 3 or 4 months after I'd got into running, I'd actually started up my first business. I'll quickly share with you how that worked. So literally, I was walking there. We were living close to a nature reserve. I just kind of was just bumming around as some kid would do, just, glaring at the stream or whatever it is. I just started walking. I started seeing all these golf balls appearing in the stream. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so the next day I went back with an empty bucket, actually, and I started foraging through bushes, jumping in streams. And I didn't have, money for proper boots to jump in the water. It would just be shoes and socks off, go bare feet in type thing, and go up to your knees in water and stuff and beyond. And so I started collecting these golf balls. And what I would do is then I would walk towards the fairway around hole 15, hole 16. And I remember the very first time this happened to me. And so I've kind of walking around the edge of the fairway. And then I've got these two old guys running over to me in sheer panic. And they're saying to me, they're like, hey, because they don't want to hit me in the head with a golf ball. That would be kind of embarrassing, right? And so what happened is they came over to me, and I'm like, hey, we came over because we were concerned about your safety. And they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I find and collect lost golf balls. And they're like, huh, really? And they check their bag, and they're down to 1 or 2 golf balls, because these guys don't have very good handicaps, right?
Sure.
They're average age of 74 years old, right? So they're not kind of Greg Norman or anything. Do you know what I mean? So they're kind of so they're like, huh, by any chance, are you selling the golf balls? They go, and I'm like, huh, never really thought about that. And I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. And then we started to get into the skill of sales and negotiation. And so over a short period of time, I started doing a little bit of research. I know that with golf balls. Now, if you're a golf fan listening in, okay, what's important is condition, okay, brand, okay, and then there were a few other skills that I learned when I opened my first business. The ability to walk away and say no. So when you're going to get a good deal or a raw deal, if you're walking away from a deal, it's going to be good for both parties. So I'd learned the trick of sales negotiation. Like I knew I had something that they needed, right? And I also knew that if I hang around hole 15 and they got 3 holes left and they've got like maybe 1 ball left,
so you're figuring out,
they're panicking.
Yeah, you're figuring out supply and demand and the timing of it as well. And you're 11 years old, right? 11 when this happened?
Right.
It seems like it's all just coming instinctively. It's kind of crazy. I mean, especially I sort of get like, hey, there's some balls here. Maybe I can sell them. But the intellect of, let's set up right here. It's almost like, let's give them the drink right before they're dying of thirst, right? Like it's smart.
Absolutely. And I remember the first time I did this, right? So I goes home to my mom with like all of these bags of coins, like pockets of coins. She's like, where did those coins come from? Like, what did you do?
Yeah,
Thinking that I'd kind of robbed. Yeah, exactly. Like I robbed a bank or something. And it's like, and then I told her the story and she's got like super proud because I gave her some of the money so that we could, like effectively buy groceries effectively because we didn't have that much money. So, and she's like super proud. And so that was kind of like where I really caught my appetite for entrepreneurship and leadership and things like that. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
How did you stay? Well, obviously, if you guys stayed training, how long did you and Mo stay training partners? How long were you in running? And then when did your time start becoming more occupied with business and less with sport?
Yeah, sure. So probably around 17, 18 years old. So probably a good 5-6 years, I would say. And at that time, you have to start making some serious decisions. I mean, you'll know this like with your kids and stuff. When you get to school and you finish, you want to go to college or whatever it is. It's kind of like when you get to college and you become a serious athlete, you then have to start making some serious decisions. Do you want to go down the sports arena? The sports field, if you're highly talented or whatever it is, or do you go to start and open your own business or grab a job or whatever it is, or apprenticeship or whatever. So you have to start making some big boy, big girl decisions, right? And so that was the decision where I had to then, I decided that I needed to go off and study, unfortunately, purely because of my background, because I came from a very poor background. I lived off the state for a long period of time. And I was just kind of sick and tired of things.
Yeah.
So, it was just kind of fortunate. I was actually, when I was at the age of 16, my first proper job was working at McDonald's, just to pay for college fees and go into university and stuff. I did that off my back. No one supported me in that financially. So I had to really kind of find my way in very early on in life. But there's a lot of life lessons to be learned.
I think there's also this, I've never talked about it on here before because it was kind of an easy decision in hindsight, but I ended up doing some boxing when I was in the U.S. Army and I did all right with it. It was kind of at a local level, and it's when I was stationed in Berlin, Germany, and these kind of local fights turned into me getting orders at some point, or the possibility of getting orders. I don't remember if I actually got them or they were going to issue them, but it didn't really matter because what I knew was I had taken this thing about as far as I was going to take it. So like, even though I was winning my fights, seeing double in the locker room after a fight that I'd won, you know what I mean? Like it didn't feel like I was winning a lot of these fights, and competition was only going to get stiffer because now I'd be fighting other people on orders, and I was already fighting different countries, but the competition was just going to go way up. And I think there's this line for everybody where, of course, you want to chase your dreams and all that, right? But I also think, especially when it comes to athletics, because it's a little bit different, it is truly measurable. Like I was never going to have the footwork I tried like everything I could do. And
Sure.
same with what you do, there's a certain level of speed you're going to hit as a runner that then Mo separates, right? Then it's Mo,
Absolutely.
and he's going to become a world champion. And
Right.
that line, even though it might only be a 2% difference, is all the difference in the world when it goes from being an amateur to being like a world-class athlete, right? And so that decision for me was like really easy. Like when they even started talking about it, I was like, no, I need to go back and do my job and like move forward and
Right.
have a career. Or because there's nothing worse to me than seeing an athlete chase a dream that they're probably never going to catch, and then you see them into their 30s and stuff, and it's like,
Right.
life has kind of gotten by them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I mean, it's interesting because if you're a soccer player, if you're an American football player, if you're an athlete, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you've got all loads of people that are doing the same. And the thing is, there's such a small percentage of people that go through to the top, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's so like so tiny.
Yeah.
And so then the risk is that do you get injured? Then you're kind of screwed, right? You got no education to fall back on. So when you're really young, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, there's an element of risk involved, right? So same for you. You made a conscious decision, and it was the same for me. I made a conscious decision. Do I regret it? No. I would have stayed. I would have made the same decision. So at the end of the day, you just don't know. You just don't know.
So as you go off to school and you're funding yourself through school, what are some of those other, what's next after that? What are some of the early career, business decisions or paths that you took from there?
Well, I think from there, like when I got to when I when I got to the age of 18, I mean, I'm like kind of buzzing, like when you're an 18-year-old man, okay, very young, highly energetic. I was doing full-time studies, a full-time job, and I'd opened up my own first part-time massage therapy clinic as well. So I didn't really have a lot of time in the day to even breathe. Like, because for me, I always had this mindset, and maybe it's the same for you, but I always had this mindset of the harder you work, the bigger the reward. I mean, I have a very different outset now, but back in the day, that's what I thought, right? So I always was into what was going to say? I always loved helping people because I didn't get help myself. So I love to help people. That's kind of like some of my core values, right? I really genuinely love to authentically help people. And so I got into my big dream was working on cruise ships, working as a physical trainer and doing sports biomechanics and massage therapy and that kind of stuff. And I did that, right? So I did that. I'd gone out of England, and my regular cruise ship was out of New York and then to Bermuda. That was my regular cruise. So I did that. Wasn't what it was made out to be. And then, hey, we start again. We start from scratch. We build it up, and then I ended up getting into fitness. Opening up my first business, turn it into a 6-figure business and stuff like that. And just got a little bit, what's the word? I was really, and I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet because I was very good at what I did. I started writing courses for chiropractors, chiropodists, personal trainers. And what their biggest problem is their clients were going to them and they were getting injured. Right, they were suffering from pain. So you get your average office worker that suffers from lower back pain because he's been sitting on his ass for all day, right? And so I then started writing courses, and then I started teaching the trainers how to get their clients out of pain. So that was a very successful career. But then I was just kind of a little bit delusional about where the industry was going. And then I started having it. I had this massive epiphany, Ken. And it was interesting because the epiphany was I woke up one day and I said to myself, there's got to be more to life. I'm literally destined. Like, what is the big legacy piece of puzzle here? Where is the big, what's the big picture here? What's the big impact? What am I making here? And I just felt like I I could do more with my life. And I felt like there was a disconnect between what I was actually doing to what I really wanted to do. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if you can relate.
No, it absolutely does. But what was that feeling? Just was it the feeling of I've accomplished something, but it doesn't feel like much? Or I mean, what was it just a discontent? What was the feeling?
I think my feeling is that I felt lost and confused at the time.
Yeah.
I literally lacked clarity. I didn't really understand the direction I was going in.
Was there a bit of I'm sorry, was there a bit of I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but you were talking about hey, the harder I work, then the better I'll do, right? The more money I'll make, which I was raised the same way. We didn't, I think you had maybe tougher economic circumstances, but ours weren't like awesome. And, a lot of those preconditioned kind of money things, like money doesn't grow on trees. You get what you work for, like things like that, right? And
sure.
And so it's sort of like, well, the input equals the output, right? If I bust my ass for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, then I'm going to get that, which I don't think is a bad thing to learn. But I also think it's based in scarcity, because the antithesis of it is, well, if I don't bust my ass, there won't be anything, right? Which is the same thing, but it's scarcity driven. And so I'm just wondering, when you get to this point, if it's, what's all this hard work for, right? Like why don't I feel better, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to understanding what is your purpose,
right?
What is, like, it's kind of like having that conscious, that kind of questioning your subconscious mind, and you'll be like, to say to yourself, you're like, what's the point in this? Like, why am I getting up? Like, I'm working with clients that I enjoy working with, but then when you come to the realization where you feel like you can offer the world much more, you then start questioning your inner critic, you start questioning your subconscious, and you really start to question, and you start to try to find answers. That was where I was at. Right. And I really had questions, but I couldn't quite figure out the answers. So that was, it was a real struggle for me. It was a bit like going through quicksand. Do you know what I mean? It literally felt like going through quicksand. So, and then it took I reckon it probably took a good 18 months to really try to find my feet. But more importantly, I was trying to discover what my unique, what was my uniqueness?
Yeah, what's your gift? What's the thing you're going to give, right?
Exactly. What is my genius, effectively, right? What do I bring to the game? And so it was through the help of a coach that I'd met, actually, and they had really kind of like got to learn about me as a friend, and then they was able to kind of, I suppose, demystify and bring it all together for me, and then that's kind of got me to where I'm at today, which is in the world of business strategy, which is in the world of leadership development and things like that. So it's kind of like, for me, I'm in a happy place now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I'm in a happy place. I'm humble, but I'm in a happy place. And when you've been in business for a period of time that I've been in, money isn't my driver. My purpose, my authenticity, leading with integrity, it's big picture. Leaving legacy is kind of my core driver. Nothing else, nothing more. Couldn't give a shit about money. So, because and it's a mindset shift more than anything else. A complete mindset shift.
How do you define legacy for you? What is that for you? Great
question. Legacy to me is being able to sort of say to myself, like, why did God put me on this planet?
Mm-hmm.
What is my purpose in life? Like, based on what do you enjoy, based on your core values, and looking at kind of like, what are your audience or your clients or your customers, what are they crying out for?
Mm-hmm.
What is their big pain points that you could help them with? So based on your core interests as well, is going to depend on, and it's the same for some of your listeners, right? If you are on a path of discontent, I can guarantee you it will get worse and worse and worse.
Right.
Unless you change, because everyone has choices, right? But guess what? You have to make that choice. No one can make that choice for you.
I think we just feel like, and I don't know if it's a societal thing or what, but I mean, you know, I think, because I know I've been on both sides of this equation, right? I've been on that side of not feeling aligned at all, and you know, again, I don't want to blame it on society, because there's people who figure it out and there's people who don't, I guess, but there is kind of this thing of like, again, going back to the just work hard, right? Just keep going, man. It'll all work out, right? Maybe it's a bump in the road. It's a you're just out of sorts for right now, but like just pound through it. Like keep making money, keep doing whatever. And it's like to your point, it's like, no, it's getting worse, right? I'm getting further apart from my North Star, right? I'm going off to the east or the west, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, the purpose changes when you get older. Your purpose changes in life.
Right.
Money doesn't become a main factor. Other things become important to you. I'm sure that's the same for yourself, right? Other things become important. You've got grandchildren and stuff like that. Right. So the way you're being, using your experience and wisdom, that has completely changed, and the way that you offer your USP to your core audience and stuff like that. So, you know, with regards to your question, what is legacy? It is literally kind of asking very specific questions to your subconscious with regards to, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's important? What's the purpose? Where does it lead to? What's my vision? That's going to be important. What's the vision? And where do I see myself in the next 10 years? And where do I see myself after I passed along? What do I want to be remembered for? And what are the feelings do I want to give people in terms of, like, when I pass away, even when I'm not in the room, what do you want them to say about you?
Right. Is this one of the areas where you guys really get involved in what you do with your consulting and coaching and all that?
Absolutely. Because again, what I find with a lot of people that run businesses, even leaders, is that the core foundation to running a successful business, to being a great leader, it's all to do with clarity. Because if you don't have a roadmap for success, if you don't have a GPS compass, if you don't know what direction you're going to go in, you can go in a million different ways and they might not be able to lead you to a happy path. But if you understand and you get some clarity on what you're doing in terms of activity-wise, in terms of like what you're doing, and really kind of assess where you are. And this is all about self-awareness. If you're aware of I wouldn't say, yes, your strengths, but also room for improvement, right? If you know that, because it's a path, right? It's a journey, right? There is never an end goal. There's always a continuous room for improvement, right? Totally. In the US Army, they teach you that, right? They teach you and they drill that in you, right? They push you, especially in the Marines. So they give you and they drill you that into your mindset. And that's what's going to help you move the needle that little bit further. And there's a lot of mentors out there in the leadership realm. But I think it was Jim Rohn that said this. But the idea is that every day, wake up saying that you need to make a 1% improvement in your life every single day, and you will be in a much happier place. Because either you're growing or you're dying.
Right.
You can't stay in the right. You can't plateau.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so
yeah, nothing stays still, and 1% a day compounded is ridiculous growth, right? Like, it's just crazy. It doesn't feel like much in the moment, but it's ridiculous over time. Tell me, because I like to, whenever I'm hearing someone talk, and I don't know if it's because I'm auditory, but I also like to tie it in. I like chronological order. So when did you have kind of this epiphany or wake up? How many years ago was that where you were like, hey, I don't know if I'm on the right path or not, and had to work that out?
I reckon I was probably in my early 30s. So probably talking about 8 to 10 years ago, I would say. Probably about 10 years ago, but then it took a good 18 months, couple of years to figure everything out from a clarity piece. And, for some people, working out clarity could take a month. Right. But for others, it could take years. I know a lot of business owners, small, big, leaders as well, they just go on this pathway, and it's like you brought up a mindset, the mindset of, oh, it's just going to work out okay. That's a mindset, right? That's a mindset that you believe. It's a belief system that you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you go around believing that everything's just going to work out fine, I can guarantee you will have completely the polar opposite. Completely the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you want the universe to sort out your problems? No.
Right.
You have to sort your problems out. You have to sort your challenges out. Do you know what I'm saying? So
manifestation will get you nowhere without taking massive action, right? I mean,
100%.
Manifestation is a result of the universe conspiring with you, not for you, I think, necessarily. I mean, I think you've got to be a co-creator in your own future. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. How did you get, I know you're a big advocate for like women in the workplace, and like, where did that fit in and where did that come from? And was it during this same time frame? And if I'm jumping ahead in the story, just wrap me back around.
It's interesting. So it's a good story. I got another good. I'm full of good stories today.
Cool.
So believe it or not, I about 8 years ago, maybe around 8 years ago. No, maybe 6 to 8 years ago. I was still I really wanted to get into the corporate wellbeing space effectively, right? Because again, I wanted to do speaking. Offer leadership, offer ways in which companies can improve their employee engagement effectively, right? So I was really into that, really very, very much into that. And so anyway, I lost my train of thought there. I don't just hate that.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, the women in the workplace, yes. So interestingly enough, I came up with this innovative idea about how we as a company could get access to core decision makers. So I'll tell you the quick how it will work. So I came up with this idea, and the idea is that, okay, so I've got my key decision makers, and they're mainly on LinkedIn, but they don't have time to have a conversation with me, and everyone's busy, right? So I just thought to myself, how can I get access to these people? How can I have a conversation with these people? And I just thought, these people must have gatekeepers. They do. So I decided to create the Association of Extraordinary PAs. PAs as in personal assistant or executive assistants, right? So I created this personal development organization. It was completely free, by the way. Got sponsorship. It was a great it was a great new idea. I did it for about 18 months, but the idea was that I built a relationship up with the PAs and executive assistants. We gave them some lessons in personal development, whether it be around mindset, whether it be around productivity, whether it be around tools, resources, whatever it might be. But we effectively gave them some free stuff effectively, right? They'd come along, they'd get fed for free, and being able to have a couple of glasses of champagne and wine and that kind of stuff. And so over a period of time, I started to develop a relationship with those PAs. Okay, that's where the women journey started to really start for me. And then I don't know, for some particular reason, it's like you may have kind of come across this, but you magnetize who you kind of like. If they like you, what you're about in terms of your core values, I then started to not get physically attracted, but they were kind of magnetized towards me. The women started to be magnetized towards me because they could see what I could offer them as a resource. So I started off with working with women, mainly in the professionals, those gatekeepers that would introduce me to their bosses. And then it started transitioning into women that ran their own companies, run their own businesses, small and large. And then I started just kind of supporting them because, men and women are very different, the way that we're wired. You would have probably read the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus type of thing. And so you're just being able to use certain skills where women can take the skills from men and vice versa. We can learn off each other so that we can be better leaders, better entrepreneurs and things like that. So that's kind of how I got into the whole kind of like women's space. And I ended up getting on the front cover of Global Woman magazine, and they did a massive thing with me on that. So that was kind of cool.
That's really cool.
So that's kind of where it's at.
I have this theory, and it's probably not too far-fetched just based on your background, but I mean, I think that even though it shouldn't be this way, I mean, it's 2023 for God's sakes, but I think sometimes women are underrepresented in certain industries, right? And at times, it can feel like a boys' club depending on the job or the space or whatever. And I think you were the 11-year-old with your hair falling out with asthma, and I think you were the underdog, right? And I kind of feel like there's probably that part in you that's always like, you see an underdog, you're going to gravitate there. And I think that's probably why they were attracted back to you, is like, here's a guy that kind of gets where we're coming from a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. And, you're absolutely bang on. I suppose you would class me as a bit of an underdog, really. But you can learn so many lessons. When I was an athlete, I'd learned so many mindset hacks, for example. Right? You were in the US Army. There is a lot of things that you can take from a leadership perspective, from a mindset attributes perspective, and bringing it into business. There's just so much that we guys can offer, not just leaders and entrepreneurs, but we can offer so much because, again, we have that, we've been there, we've experienced it. Whereas some entrepreneurs that are kind of new to the game, or maybe we've got listeners in that have maybe finish their business, right? Finish corporate and then they've opened their business, right? That's a complete transition shift, right? There's a lot of things that you have to learn, not just about running a business, but your biggest enemy, your biggest competition is you. Right. You are the main spanner that holds a business back generally.
Yes. I coach kind of more in our space, which Leaders Lab is really a leadership recruiting company. So we place leaders in jobs. And then nice. I'm a coach in kind of a worldwide recruiters group. And yeah, mindset is, it's always mindset. It's like 80% of it is just mindset. It's all the entrepreneurs that say they want to be their own boss, which is weird, because if you ask someone, why do you want to be your own boss? Probably the number one answer would be freedom. And being free and being a boss are almost like polar opposites of each other, right? I want to be free, but I want to be my own boss. Well, if you want to be your own boss, technically, shouldn't you be telling yourself what to do, right? Shouldn't you be showing up and be like super disciplined and be like maybe even tougher on yourself than you would somewhere else? But literally people freeze sometimes when they leave that corporate environment and into like, oh my God, I've got to self-direct now, I think it's super cool. I also think, whatever that underdog story is, whether it's somebody who again, grew up as a kid and had some of the things that you went through, or somebody that had a drug problem, or somebody that was in trouble with the law, or somebody that, lost 150 pounds. It's like, I actually want to learn from people who have been there and done that. Right. Like, I think that, and we can all learn from each other in a variety of different things. But I guess what I'm saying is, in a leader, I don't necessarily want someone who's always had all the answers and always done well. Right. I want someone who goes, I've been exactly where you were. In fact, might have even been a little tougher or a little bit different. And here's what happened, right? Not, absolutely. I've always been on top and you should be like me. Like that is an old way of thinking that isn't super effective anymore, and probably never will.
I agree. I think with a lot of people, especially in social media space in particular, is that we create this perception in our mind that everyone's doing so well and that kind of stuff. But under the belly of it all, it's not such a pretty story, because there's always adversity, there's always challenging, there's always resiliences. And, it's the same with our mastermind group. The reasons why we want to give our members our edge is like, you just picked up a really good point. We want to learn from people that have been there, done that, have got the t-shirt. They've been through the adversities. They've been through the hard times. But, when you get useful insights from people that have been there, done that, with people that are kind of like, what's the word I was looking for? People that have already achieved what you're wanting to achieve, okay, then it kind of sets you apart from everybody else. Because again, you're getting insight, you're gaining an accelerated learning module, or it's kind of like university, but on 10 levels higher in entrepreneurship. So that to me is kind of like absolutely 100% imperative.
Yes,
It gives you
I think that
It
that
is.
old phrase, find a mentor and model them, right, is what you're talking about. And it's like, it's just, why reinvent the wheel? And it's funny, I've had to learn that lesson repeatedly, because there's times I'm just like, it's almost like, why don't you just pull over and ask for directions? It's like, oh, I'll figure it out. Like, even though it's going to take 3 times longer. I've gotten better as I've gotten older with it. So talk to us now about, I know that you are very involved in helping businesses scale quickly, grow quickly. Can you talk to us about that and kind of what your day-to-day mission is now?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, as you said, we love to help companies grow. One of the things that we've identified is working with a lot of, so we mainly work with people in the professional services industry. So that'll be your recruitment firm, that will be your lawyer, attorney, accountant, CPA, that kind of stuff. And what we found is that a lot of the clients that we're dealing with are hugely experienced. They got huge amounts of credibility. They've got degrees and PhDs, to your heart's content. Okay. They're good at what they do. Right. But unfortunately, with some of the clients that we work with, is they'll build their business up and then they'll just plateau. They'll just like plateau for like months, if not years, and they'll stay there because their aspiration is that they want to be free. They want to make a transition to the next level, right? They have this lack of clarity about what that looks like. But number two, they don't know what they have confidence and knowledge. They have gaps in their knowledge know-how about how to go about doing it. So we've already talked about clarity and stuff. So what we do is we effectively have a mastermind group effectively. So we put together a huddle, if you like, or a small group of people, and we literally share experiences. We gain insights from other businesses, different industry sectors. What did you experience? Why did you do that? How did it make you feel? So we're able to get an idea of when we ourselves come into a situation that's similar, we're more adapted and more resourceful to be able to, kind of push through, if you like. Does that make sense?
It totally does. One of the things that I'm thinking of as you're talking is I've had some friends that have been like medical professionals. So let's say a dentist, or
Right.
like a general MD with a practice. And I feel like the traditional, and this would be like a traditional, like successful, like way to do business, right? Would be, you go to medical school, maybe you have to pay your dues at the hospital for a while, work in the ER, maybe you get some money somehow, you're still paying off your enormous student loans and all that debt, but then you eventually get out and you start your own practice. As you start your own practice, it builds up and you're making good money. So that's the dream. But within the dream, you're working like, you're probably getting back to what we talked about, where like this is all there is, because you're working 60 hours a week or 70
Right.
or 80, and the money's really good, but the whole business depends on you, and it's going to like completely, it's not just going to implode, it's just going to cease to exist because you're the doctor and like no one else is the doctor. So what do you do next? And it is like the definition of being on the hamster wheel. The other thing is it's not scalable, it's not sellable. So if you're lucky, I feel like in that environment, you get an understudy under you that you then train and then sell the business for less than it's worth, because that's the only way to sell it. That seems to be the model in that world. Am I right?
Well,
kind of.
You're pretty much bang on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they did a survey, and this only applies to the UK market, the US market. And I think it was a survey of it was a large amount. I think it was like 10,000 business owners or whatever it is, but only 4% of those 10,000 had an exit strategy in place. Less than 4% it was.
Right.
So effectively, bringing up what you just said, right? It goes back to the analogy of, again, when it comes to scaling, they lack. So there's a few things that they lack. Number one is they have fear, first of all, the fear of letting go, because effectively, if you built something up, right, it doesn't mean, even when you're a kid, right, when you're building your first Lego set, it's like, I built this, right? This is mine, right? It's kind of like my baby type thing. Same with a business, right? You build something, right? You're proud of it. You don't want to let it go and give it to somebody else, hand it over to someone, right? Because guess what? They might destroy it or take it away, right? So they have that fear. They also have this fear of they have this, well, it's not really a fear, but they have this skill of micromanaging. So they micromanage everyone and everything. Okay. So they'll never get out of that cycle because, like you've highlighted, they don't see their wife, they don't see their, they don't know what freedom is, right? So they lack this necessarily, they lack this mindset, but they lack the necessary know-how, skills, and knowledge to know exactly what is it that we need to do. Oh, do we need to systemize? Do we need to do we need to bring this person in? Do we need a so it's kind of like, every business is different, right? Every leader's different. And so we have to really kind of like take that into an account. So that's kind of like what we're doing right now. And it's very exciting because it's kind of like there's not like a one size fits all approach.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. One thing I kind of dig about it, just as you're talking about it, I love hearing, to me, business and business strategy, not to be cliche about it, but there's kind of a gamesmanship to it in a way. Like I like the act of like figuring it out. Like, I love shows like, what's that one on Netflix? It's like an about this kind of thing. And it shows you like how fish aquariums are made. I don't know, like just weird stuff. Right. And I'm like, I like seeing how businesses are broken down and how they get to their number and how they grow. And so, yeah, it's always cool to be in masterminds like that. Anything else for us before we wrap up? I've really enjoyed this talk.
Thank you. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it myself. And it goes back to what do you want in life?
Yeah.
Right. What do you want in life? And this kind of realization of my bigger purpose, my bigger impact, my legacy, really going back to that. Because again, whether you're a leader, whether you're running a recruitment firm, whether you're running a small agency, it doesn't really matter. Fundamentals don't change. Those basic fundamentals don't change. It doesn't matter where you are and what you do in life, okay? You have to answer specific questions to yourself to make sure you're on a path of fulfillment, happiness. If you're not happy where you're at, guess what? It's your fault. No one else is. Don't blame the economy. Don't blame the president. Don't blame whoever else you can think about. It's your fault and no one else, okay? So you have to fix it. So we all have choices in life, and it's down to your choices we're going to lead to whatever path you decide to go. So that's kind of my final thought.
No, I love that. And again, it all comes from it's such great advice, but it also comes from you. No one was coming to save you when you were 11 and selling golf balls, right? You had to find a way. You had to sell golf balls. You had to take them back to the golfers. You had to sell in the 15. You had to figure it out. And as hard as that probably was back then, that's where the gift was, right? That's what started this whole entrepreneur journey, was wading through that pond back in the day.
Yep. I mean, there's no pity party here, right? So it's kind of, you need to just kind of like, man or woman up and just do what you need to do. Or if you don't know the answers, find someone who can help you. Totally. Because we've all got choices.
Totally. And I know you're out there and you can help our listeners, and we'll put all of your contact information in our show notes. Thanks a lot. Pleasure to meet you.
Appreciate it. Likewise.
Thanks. Thank you.